Let me show you a couple of useful tools for your toolbox. Well, they look like ordinary spokes, but we're going to make these into some very efficient, useful tools. Start with a double-butted steel spoke. Steel is stronger than alloy. Double-butted because the center is just the right diameter for the uses that we're going to employ. You can pick up these double-butted spokes from your local bike store, or for pennies you can get them off AliExpress or eBay. We're going to need to cut one of these spokes towards the middle, the thinner diameter portion, and if you have a spoke cutter, it makes it easy. If you don't, take your spoke, place it in a vise, and begin bending it back and forth. And I'll break off with a fairly clean edge. If you need to straighten out the end, just use a pair of pliers. If you don't have spoke or bolt cutters or a vice grip, or even pliers, just grab it somewhere in the middle and again bend it back and forth, and it will eventually break off cleanly. To make our first set of tools rather easy, using a metal file, we've sharpened the end of this spoke, broken spoke. If you want, you can even bend the top to a handle, make it easier to use. Well, how do I use this? When we're replacing cable housing, often we have to trim the housing. There's some brake housing. We want to trim it to this point. And if we look at the end, we can see that the end is somewhat deformed, and we'd like to round that out. We'll take our spoke with the point, we'll carefully insert it into the end of the housing and work it back and forth until it moves freely. And what is also interesting is that the ferrule that goes on the end will still fit. It's not, the cable housing is not distorted such that the ferrule can fit on the end. Sometimes when a front derailleur cable breaks, it leaves a little tiny piece of the cable inside the housing of the shifter. Go ahead and click that shifter as though you're shifting to the smallest cog a number of times. Take your Velcro strip, wrap it around, and pull back on the shifter so as to expose the hole in which the tiny fragment of cable appears, and go ahead and try to insert into that hole as such your spoke. And here's that broken little piece of cable that came out the other side. Put the J at the end of the spoke facing towards you and bend around and go behind the J. There we go. Notice there's a slight gap there. This will lock perfectly in place. This is great for hanging loose tools or parts. Again, locks very nicely in place. And hang these from our pegboard for quick access. Still another use is to take one of the broken segments and bend the ends. We have a nice little chain hanger. We can now use this for installing or removing chains. If you have any questions or additions, please comment below. Subscribe to keep up with our latest videos. This is Tony of Tony 10 Speed Safe Cycling.